In this video, you're going to continue styling the Indecision app, and as we style it, we're going to start breaking stuff out into a separate settings file. What are we going to break out? We're going to break out things like our hex color codes and common spacing values, values that end up getting used and reused throughout the application. So the whole point of this is to create one place where a lot of those values live. So if I want to tweak them, I can tweak them once, and the change will show up everywhere they're used. So right now, if I wanted to tweak the 1.6 REM sizing, I would tweak it here, I would have to tweak it here, and I'd have to go into the base file and tweak it here. It would be nicer if we had one place where a lot of these common settings lived. We would be able to change the settings there and have the application update to reflect those changes. That's exactly what we're going to do, and the new file will live in the base folder. I'm going to call this one _settings.scss. This file isn't going to contain a single selector. No styles will get applied. It is just a place to define the theme for our app. We're going to be defining a bunch of variables. Now this file is going to get included as well. Over inside of styles.scss, we're going to be importing this one way at the top. So if the other files are going to take advantage of the variables created in settings, settings has to come first. So those variables actually get defined right here at import. And the path is // This one is inside of base, and the file itself is settings. Awesome. Now that we have this actually wired up, we can go ahead and start creating some settings. Now, before we even write a new selector, we can just take some of our current selectors and tweak them a little bit. So we have a few already, and for example, the header background, that could get pulled out into a variable defined elsewhere. So let's go ahead and do just that. I'm going to take this hex value and copy it to the clipboard, and over here, we're going to create a new section just using a comment for our colors. And the color that we're going to define for the value we just copied could be called something like off black. So we start off with a $, then we give our variable a name, off black. When we're creating an SCSS variable, we have to start off with a $, then we go ahead and give it a value. I already copied that value, and there we have it. We now have an off black variable that we can take advantage of inside of our application. That means over inside of header, instead of defining this guy in line, I can just reference the variable right here, $ off black. I can go ahead and save the header file. And over here, this value, this is the one that's getting used. Now, how do we prove that? We just tweak this value. I change this over to something like red. I save the file, and in the background, we're going to see that the header automatically picked up that change, and we now have a terribly looking red header background. But if we undo the change, it is going to bring us back to the value we want, and the end result is our application looks the same, but we now have a variable that we can reuse anywhere we need to apply this color. If we want to tweak the color, we can just tweak it once right here, and all of the other application style files will automatically get that new value. We can do the exact same thing for the other color defined inside of header. Now down below, we have this guy right here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy that as well, and we're going to create a new variable for it. Over inside of settings, I can call this really light purple, something like off-white. I can set it equal to the hex value we just copied. Now we can reference off-white with one T anywhere we need that value. And for the moment, it's just one place. Inside of header, off white. Perfect. Now both of those values are broken out into variables that can be used and reused. And what we're going to do is just do this a couple more times. We're going to do it for some of the spacing values defined in our files. Things like 1.6 REMs, 3.2 REMs, and 4.8 REMs. Now it's going to be your job to go ahead and break out 1.6. It's used here, here, and it's used over here. And if we change this in one place, we're going to want to change it everywhere. If we're scaling up the global font size, we're also going to scale up the font size of the subtitle. And we're also going to increase the spacing in the header so that bigger font size looks a little more reasonable. So all we need to do is create a variable that gets used in all three locations, and that's going to be your job. So right here, go ahead and get that done. And you can call the variable name something like M-size, which is short for the medium size. We're going to have a few different sizing variables in place, and this one can be M-size, and we'll toss it under a brand new section of variables, and we'll just call this spacing. Perfect. Take some time to create the variable, use it in all 3 locations, and then test your work. You can test your work by tweaking it. Make it a little bigger or a little smaller, and make sure everything adjusts accordingly. When you're done, you can go ahead and click play. All right, that should have been an easy one. Step 1 was to make the variable $M size. We then go ahead and provide a value. I told you to do 1.6 REM. And now we can go ahead and actually use msize wherever we want. I'm going to save this file and scooch over here to the base partial. I'm going to tweak it here using msize. And I'll do the exact same thing over inside of the header file in both locations. msize. And then down below, msize. Now that we have this in place, we can just tweak the value once and it'll update everywhere. So if I want to increase the font size, I can just take this up to something like 2 REMs. I can save the settings file, and the end result is that all of the font sizes got tweaked. The base font size got a little bigger, our subtitle matches that size, and we added a little more spacing around the header. I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to 1.6 because that is the actual value that we're going to be using. Now there are 2 more we're going to break out before we continue on. Right here we have 4.8, and then down below we have 3.2. Let's go ahead and define 2 more spacing sizes real quick. The next one is going to be L size. For large size, that'll be 3.2 REMs. And then down below, we're going to have the biggest size we'll be using, which is the XL size. That will be 4.8. Awesome. 4.8 REM. Now we can use both of those right here inside of header. We got 4.8. Let's replace that with an XL size variable. And then down below, we have 3.2, which will be the large size. Perfect. Now that we have that done, let's go ahead and actually continue on with the styles. As we continue on and as we add new styles, we're going to be breaking them out into variables as opposed to defining everything first and then breaking them out. Now you notice there's some things I didn't break out, and this is really up to your discretion. Things that are going to change quite a bit, things that you want to change together, like that font size, those are usually going to get broken out into settings. But some stuff, like the font weight for the subtitle, doesn't necessarily need to be broken out into a setting. You could easily go too far with settings. There is a nice middle ground that we're going to strike here. So we'll have some stuff that gets reused a lot, broken out into variables, and other one-off things, those are just going to stay in line. All right, let's go ahead and create a brand new file in the components folder. This one is going to allow us to center all of the content on the screen. We're going to call this one _ container.scss, and this container style is just going to allow us to center the stuff inside of the header. So it's going to start over here and end over here. And it's also going to allow us to center the stuff down below. So it'll run from here to here as opposed to all being shoved against the left side of the screen. Let's start off with a class-based selector for container, and we're going to apply just a few rules in order to get everything centered correctly. First up is the max width. We need to constrain the max width of the container, and we're going to set it equal to 60 REM. That is going to give us a max width so we can actually distribute the extra space evenly on the left and the right. If we don't provide this, it's always going to take up 100% of the width available, and we're never going to be able to center our content. Next up, we're going to go ahead and actually center things using margin. So we're going to set the margin on the top and the bottom to 0. That's not why we're here. We're here to set the margin on the left and the right to auto. So if the browser is 70 REMs wide, we're going to distribute the extra 10 REMs evenly on the left and the right. So we would have 5 REMs on either side. Now at this point, we can actually go ahead and test this out. I'm going to save the container file, and I'm also going to import it over inside of the styles file. Now the order here really isn't important. I'm just going to import things from the components folder in alphabetical order. Importing the new file, ./components/container. Now the last thing to do before we're going to see our changes is to actually use this new class. Currently it's not used anywhere. That's going to happen first off inside of header. Now we don't want to take this new class and apply it to this guy right here, because what's that going to do? It is going to constrain the width of this blue bar, which means the blue bar won't run all the way from the left to the right. If we do want to run it from the left to the right, we need to add another div inside of it to center the H1 and the H2, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So right here, we're going to add a div for the container, and the stuff we want to center is going to sit right inside. Now all we need to do is actually apply the class to that brand new div, class name, setting it equal to the thing we just defined, container. Now if we go ahead and save the header file, we're going to see that the indecision title and subtitle are correctly centered. The left side being over here and the right side being somewhere right around here. And all of that is happening because we have those two rules in place. Now as things get smaller, you're going to notice that things do seem to work pretty well, but you will notice that things are really close to the edge of the screen. We can actually fix that by applying some light padding to the container. Right here, let's go ahead and set up the padding. Do we want padding on the top and the bottom? No, that's fine. We're just going to go ahead and set up a little padding on the left and the right, and I'm going to use the new mSize variable to get that done. If we save container, we can see that things are now pushed off of the side, and that's exactly what we want. This is going to create a much nicer experience, making sure that the app doesn't look like it's broken on bigger or smaller screens. Now that we have this container class in place, we can actually reuse it down below as well. We have all of this stuff, the stuff that ends up in this background. We want to make sure that gets centered as well. Now, obviously, that does not live in the header, so we need to use the container class somewhere else. And where is that somewhere else? It is actually right inside of Indecision app. So if we take a look at the structure right here, we have action, we want to center that. We have options, we have add option, and we have the option modal. The option modal doesn't need to be part of the thing we're centering, but these three do. In order to actually apply the styles to them, we're once again just going to create a wrapper div, and we're going to put all of that stuff right inside. So we're going to take action, options, and add option, cut them out, and paste them in, removing any extra space we might have. And then all we need to do to actually get them centered is to apply the class name, setting it equal to container. Now, if we save the Indecision app, we're going to notice that not only is the header content centered, the body content down below is also centered. And we were able to do all of that with a single selector, 3 styles, and we applied the class a couple of times. Now it's your turn. What I'd like you to do is create a new variable called dark blue with value of, and I'm going to give you the hex value for that new variable. It's going to be the hex value 333745. Now, what are you going to do with that new variable? You are going to use it as the body background. Use as body background. The end result is that this white background, the current body background, is going to turn into this lighter blue one we have over here. It's not quite as dark as the header area, but it's still pretty dark. So go ahead and knock that out, and the end result is the background should change. So make sure that you are seeing the new color as opposed to the white one. You're going to want to set up the variable, use it, save your file, test your work, and then you can go ahead and click play. All right, let's get to it. Step 1 is to define the brand new variable that's going to live over in the settings file, and I'm going to toss it right here under colors. We're going to call this one dark blue, and the hex value was 333745. Now that we have dark blue defined, we can go ahead and actually use it. I'm going to use it over in base where we have the body selector. I like to keep all of my styles in alphabetical order, background coming before F. I'll set background equal to dark blue. I'm going to save all of my files, and the end result is that the background does indeed change. We no longer have that bright white background. We now have the final background color, this blue. You can see it over here, and you can see it in our current version of the app. So we're not quite done yet. There are still plenty of things to style, but we have made some really nice progress. Things are starting to look a little more like where they're going to end up, and we're just going to continue on in the next video. Let's take just a quick second to recap. In this one, aside from introducing new styles, we've also introduced a new way to structure our styles by defining a settings file. In here, we define a lot of values that get used and reused, and that makes it really easy to tweak these values down the line. Instead of having to dig through all of our styles files and find the hex value, we can just change the hex value here, and it'll update anywhere the variable is referenced. Let's continue on in the next one. Stay tuned. I'll see you soon.